let's dive right in. Today, we're going deep, and I mean deep, into the life of Joe Biden. And where better to start than the ultimate source? His Wikipedia page.
Sounds dry. Trust me, it's anything but. We're talking decades in the political arena, from local politics all the way to the White House. This isn't just a rehash of dates and speeches. We're looking for those hidden gems, those unexpected details that reveal the man behind the presidency.
Exactly. We want the aha moments, those surprising facts that make you see Diamond Joe in a whole new light. And I gotta say, just digging into his early life, I'm already hooked.
Right. It's easy to forget he wasn't always a political heavyweight. His story, especially those early years, it's really a reflection of the American dream, but with some twists and turns along the way.
You mentioned twists, and I think that's what makes this so fascinating. This isn't a simple rags to riches tale. His family, they had money, lost it, then clawed their way back up. Talk about resilience.
And let's not forget the used car salesman in the mix.
Oh man, the used car salesman. That's not the image that usually springs to mind when you think future president. But hey, it's America, right? It makes you think about how those experiences, those ups and downs, must have shaped him.
Absolutely. And it wasn't just about the money. Imagine being uprooted, moving from Long Island back to Scranton, living with extended family. That leaves a mark, forges a certain resilience. You learn about economic struggles firsthand, not just from a textbook.
Makes you think about how he connected with working class families later on. It's in his DNA, in a way. But enough about the family business. Let's talk about young Joe, the student. Word on the street is he wasn't exactly a scholar in those early years.
Well, the sources paint a picture of a bright kid, for sure, but traditional academics. Let's just say he had other talents. He even got into some hot water along the way.
Hot water, huh? What kind of trouble are we talking about?
We'll get there, but first, here's the real kicker. This so-called poor student, he gets elected class president.
Hold on, the same kid who struggled in school was popular enough to lead his class. That's quite the contradiction.
Exactly. And it speaks to a pattern we see throughout his career, this ability to connect with people, even if he doesn't always fit the mold. But back to those school days. This is where we hit our first major speed bump. Plagiarism.
Wait, are we talking about that infamous 1988 campaign incident? I didn't realize it went back further than that.
Oh, this goes way back. Law school, in fact. Syracuse University. He was accused of plagiarizing a law review article, even received a failing grade in the course, though for the record, it was later removed.
Wow, plagiarism in law school, that's a bold move for a future president. Talk about high stakes. How on earth did he recover from that?
Tenacity, for one,
Yeah.
and adaptability. Get this, at this point, he actually identified as a Republican. He even clerked for a well-known one. It was a period of flux, politically speaking. He wasn't a fan of the conservative Democrat running his state and ended up backing a more liberal Republican. He even registered as an independent for a bit.
You're telling me he was a Republican? What a twist, especially for someone who becomes such a big name in the Democratic Party. So here we have young Biden, law degree in hand, trying to find his political identity. Where does his actual legal career fit into all of this?
That's the thing. The law itself never seemed to truly captivate him. He dabbles in public defense, then private practice, but nothing really sticks. Corporate law wasn't his style, and criminal law, well, let's just say it didn't exactly fund a lavish lifestyle. He ends up managing properties just to make ends meet.
From managing properties to the United States Senate, that's quite the career jump. There has to be a wild story there. This deep dive is full of surprises already.
Oh, there is. It's a pivotal moment, marked by both ambition and incredible tragedy. This is where things take a turn you won't believe.
From property manager to the U.S. Senate, that's quite the leap. What propelled him into that world?
Well, it's a story of ambition, but also deep sorrow. Just weeks after winning that Senate seat, tragedy struck.
Ah, yes. I'd almost forgotten about that. Losing his wife and daughter in a car accident so soon after the election. Unthinkable.
It's hard to fathom the strength it took to even consider continuing a political career after such a loss.
You're right. It makes you question what you'd do in that situation.
It speaks volumes about his resilience, but it also reveals a key part of his public image. A man who understands loss, who carries that weight. It created a sense of empathy that resonated with voters throughout his career.
It's easy to forget that politicians are real people with real lives and real tragedies.
Absolutely.
But back to his Senate career. It was a wild ride, wasn't it?
Decades in the Senate, filled with both achievements and controversy. One event in particular looms large. the Clarence Thomas hearings.
Ah, yes, the Anita Hill hearings.
Yeah.
Still debated today. A pivotal moment for sexual harassment and women's voices in politics.
Right, and at that time, Biden was chair of the Senate Judiciary Committee, overseeing those very hearings.
So he was right in the thick of it, responsible for navigating those incredibly sensitive allegations.
Exactly. It was his responsibility to handle the situation, which focused on Anita Hill's accusations against Clarence Thomas.
And Thomas, of course, was nominated to the Supreme Court, right?
That's right. And Biden's handling of the situation, particularly how he protected or didn't protect Anita Hill during her testimony, drew a lot of criticism.
It sounds like an incredibly difficult situation to manage, both politically and personally. Did Biden ever address the criticism?
He did years later. Biden expressed regret, acknowledging that he wished he had done more to support Anita Hill.
It seems like a classic example of hindsight being 20/20, especially as awareness around these issues has grown.
Absolutely. And those hearings, they still resonate, a reminder of how much has changed and how much still needs to change. But beyond the Thomas hearings, Biden was also known for his work on foreign policy.
Right, foreign policy. So what were some of his big stances during his time in the Senate?
Well, his positions were often nuanced, sometimes even going against his own party, like with the Gulf War in '91.
He opposed it, right?
Yeah.
I thought most Democrats supported that intervention.
He did oppose it, and it put him at odds with a lot of his colleagues. He believed in exhausting all other options before resorting to military action, shaped by the legacy of Vietnam.
So even early on, he was willing to stand up for his beliefs, even when they were unpopular. Did that independent streak continue throughout his career?
Oh, absolutely. Look at his stance on the Yugoslav wars. He actually broke with some in his own party by supporting U.S. intervention.
Interesting. Why the change of heart there?
He believed in the U.S. having a moral obligation to intervene in humanitarian crises, especially in situations like ethnic cleansing. It highlights the complexities of foreign policy, weighing non-intervention against stopping atrocities.
It seems like he always found himself at the center of these really complex debates.
Yeah.
What about his stance on the wars in Afghanistan and Iraq?
Yes. His evolving position on those wars, it's a significant part of his story. Initially, he was a strong supporter of both interventions.
Right, like many were at the time.
However, as those wars dragged on, he became one of the most vocal critics, particularly of the Iraq War, even calling it a mistake.
A pretty stark admission for a politician to make.
It was a bold move, for sure, but it also reflected his willingness to adapt his views based on changing circumstances, even if it meant admitting past errors.
It sounds like his Senate career was quite the mix of defining moments, tough calls, and constantly evolving views. He never shied away from a challenge, that's for sure. But amidst all of that, the presidency was always on his mind, wasn't it?
Always. The presidency was a persistent ambition for Biden. Remember, he ran twice before finally securing the nomination in 2020. His first attempt back in 1988 ended pretty abruptly.
That's right, 88. Wasn't that the campaign derailed by plagiarism accusations?
It was, unfortunately. Accusations of borrowing from speeches, most notably one by British Labour leader Neil Kinnock.
Ouch. Not exactly the kind of inspiration you want to be associated with.
No, it wasn't good. And while Biden insisted it was unintentional, the media firestorm forced him to withdraw.
So, plagiarism, a recurring theme early in his career. It makes you wonder if those early stumbles fueled his drive to eventually win the presidency.
It's definitely possible.
But let's not forget, his path to the White House was far from over. What about his 2008 run?
2008 was a tough year for anyone facing Obama.
You're telling me that message of hope and change? It was electric. What happened with Biden's campaign?
It was short-lived. He struggled to gain traction against Obama and Clinton. After a disappointing finish in Iowa, he decided to withdraw.
2 unsuccessful presidential campaigns. You gotta hand it to him, the man is persistent.
He is.
Little did he know, though, that the 2008 election held a different path for him, a twist of fate that would change everything.
It certainly did. While his own ambitions took a backseat, his connection with Barack Obama grew stronger.
And that connection, that unexpected turn of events, led him straight to the vice presidency. It's like something out of a political drama. Talk about a plot twist. From presidential hopeful to the VP's office. Was it a sure thing Obama would pick him, or were there other contenders in the running?
Oh, it wasn't a done deal. Obama considered a whole slate of potential running mates. Even Hillary Clinton was in the mix.
Wow, so it was a real race to the finish line.
Absolutely. But Biden had some serious advantages. His foreign policy experience was a huge asset, and his ability to connect with working-class voters, that was gold. Plus, you could just tell The two of them, they clicked. That rapport was undeniable.
A strategic choice then, but also one based on genuine respect. And they did win, not once, but twice. It makes you wonder, though, putting your own presidential dreams on hold for 8 years. That could have been easy.
No, especially after coming so close to the nomination himself. But Biden, he really embraced the role of vice president, a trusted advisor to Obama, particularly on those tough foreign policy issues. Don't forget, Obama put him in charge of overseeing the U.S. withdrawal from Iraq.
A huge responsibility. It's easy to forget, but Biden was a heartbeat away from the presidency for 8 years.
He was, and it shows how much Obama trusted his judgment, valued his experience, but eventually those presidential ambitions resurfaced.
And this time, third time's the charm, he finally clinched the Democratic nomination in 2020.
It was a long time coming, a testament to his persistence, his unwavering belief in himself.
And let's not forget, he won that election against a sitting president during a global pandemic, no less.
An unprecedented time in our nation's history. And his victory, it felt like a turning point for many, a rejection of the chaos and division of the previous 4 years.
Absolutely. But those hopes for a return to normalcy, they were quickly met with a whole new set of challenges. Domestically, he inherited a deeply divided nation, still grappling with the pandemic and a struggling economy.
He managed to push through some significant legislation, though. The American Rescue Plan, for example, provided much-needed relief to families and businesses hit hard by the pandemic.
Right, and let's not forget the bipartisan infrastructure bill, a massive investment in our roads, bridges, and broadband. It felt like a rare moment of unity in a deeply polarized political landscape.
It did, and his appointment of Ketanji Brown Jackson to the Supreme Court, the first Black woman to serve on the highest court, that was a historic moment, a sign of progress and a promise of a more inclusive future.
A landmark achievement, for sure. But his presidency wasn't without its bumps. There was that whole classified documents controversy.
Ah, yes. Remember that. Classified documents from his time as vice president found in his private office and later his home.
I do. It raised some serious questions about the handling of sensitive information. Not exactly the kind of headline a president wants.
Definitely not. It led to a special counsel investigation, although it never escalated to charges. But it cast a shadow over his presidency, no doubt about it.
It felt like that controversy, along with concerns about his age and health, really fueled the fire for those who questioned his ability to lead.
Absolutely, and those concerns, they played a significant role in his decision to forego a second term. Remember, in 2023, after months of speculation, Biden announced he wouldn't seek re-election.
A bombshell announcement, for sure. It shook up the entire political landscape. What ultimately tipped the scales, do you think?
Well, age and health were factors, undoubtedly. But there was another key element, often overlooked, his performance in the first presidential debate against Donald Trump.
Oh man, that debate, that was rough. Even people in his own party were critical.
It was widely panned. The criticisms, they were brutal, focusing on his age, his stamina, even his mental acuity. It really raised doubts about his ability to go through another grueling campaign, another 4 years in office.
A tough pill to swallow, especially for someone who had dedicated his life to public service.
It was, but it seems like that debate, it was a wake-up call. It forced him to confront those doubts, to put the country's well-being above his own ambition.
And that decision, not to seek re-election, it was a historic one. The first president to decline a second term after securing his party's nomination. There's something to be said for that kind of self-awareness, that willingness to put the country first.
I agree. It speaks to his character, his commitment to public service. He knew it was time to step aside, to let a new generation lead. And let's not forget, he accomplished a lot during his time in office. He guided us through a pandemic, spearheaded major investments in infrastructure, and championed social justice. His legacy, it's complex, full of highs and lows, but undeniably significant.
He was a man of contradictions, that's for sure, but he was also a man of deep conviction, someone who genuinely cared about people. And I think, in the end, that's what people will remember.
I think you're right. He was a man of the people, shaped by his own experiences, his own losses, and his own unwavering belief in the American dream.
And that's a wrap on our deep dive into the life and legacy of Joe Biden. From Scranton to the Senate to the White House, it's been quite a journey. Join us next time as we delve into another fascinating figure from history. Until then, keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep those deep dives going.